Chosen ones, what I am about to share might surprise you, or even overwhelm you, because it confirms something you have always known deep down. If you are watching this video, it is not by chance. God has led you here because something powerful is happening in your life. You didn't imagine it, you weren't crazy. You have just forced a corrupt cop to confess. The truth has come out, and your name is finally cleared. Take a moment and do 3 things. Click like, subscribe to help us reach 70,000 subscribers, and leave a comment with the number 11. This number sends a powerful signal to the universe, amplifying the energy of this message. And remember, if you are truly a chosen one, you will watch until the end, because your spirit already knows this message is meant for you. Let's get to the heart of the matter. The lie they wove against you, the false accusations, the whispers behind closed doors. Everything has been revealed. You just forced the corrupt cop to confess, and it wasn't a discreet confession hidden in a dusty file. It was a clap of thunder that shook heaven and earth, a confession so resounding that the spiritual world recorded it as a testimony. Every plot they orchestrated, every trap they set for you, every lie they uttered against you, collapsed in an instant when the truth broke out. For so long, they acted like untouchable guardians of the lie, wearing badges of authority but serving the darkness of manipulation. They thought their uniform made them divine, that their connections gave them power. But in the end, the very one who stood against you could not escape divine justice. He had to admit what you already knew, he had to bow before the truth you carried within you. And here is what shocks the most: you never begged for this moment, you never bribed for it, you never plotted for it to happen. Your calm, your resilience, your unwavering faith forced the lie to turn against itself. The system that once taunted you now trembles. The confession was not merely the admission of a corrupt cop, it was a prophetic proclamation, a cosmic declaration: your name is cleared. Think about it. They tried to make you look crazy, they whispered that you were imagining things, they told others you were exaggerating, that you were bitter, even dangerous. But a single confession changed the entire story. Now, those very people who doubted you whisper in admiration. The chosen one was right all along. Fate shifted so suddenly it feels like a divine plot twist, written even before the creation of the world. Do not underestimate the importance of this moment. This confession was monumental, a true spiritual earthquake. It was God Himself tearing the veil, declaring to every witness, "This child is mine, this name is pure, this vessel carries the truth." And when heaven speaks, no earthly system can contradict it. Your rehabilitation is not private, it is public. The confession revealed much more than the policeman. It exposed an entire system of lies designed to stifle your destiny. They wanted to silence you, but now they remain speechless, unable to explain how you survived, how you endured, how you rose again without vengeance in your heart. That is what hurts them most. You didn't win through revenge, you won through truth, you won thanks to divine timing. Now your name, once dragged through the mud, rises like a banner in the wind. Your name is pure, your spirit is free, and your story is no longer one of survival against accusation, but one of embodied victory. This is more than a confession, it is a coronation, the public consecration of your integrity, your resilience, and your divine mission. O chosen one, you stand in a moment that few know, the exact second where lies collapse under their own weight, the exact second where heaven forces earth to confess what it tried to conceal. Your enemies did not want to tell the truth, but the pressure of divine justice tore it from their lips. The corrupt cop confessed, the case is closed, heaven exults, and the world can no longer deny it. Your name is cleared, but O chosen one, you know this admission did not come easily. It was born from years of wandering through a maze of lies so dense you could barely see the next step. Every hallway was filled with whispers, every corner held a shadow ready to trip you, every path was designed to make you doubt yourself. They didn't just accuse you once, they layered accusation upon accusation, building a labyrinth intended to bury you alive. They thought by piling up enough lies, the truth would suffocate. Yet, every lie they uttered became a stone beneath your feet. They thought they were building a tomb, but heaven was building you a staircase. They tried to crush you, but the pressure forged you into unbreakable steel. What they called shame became your shield. As the chains became your weights, what they plotted for your destruction became the very fuel for your ascent. Think of how they operated. Every rumor was calculated, every slander repeated, every defamation passed from hand to hand like poisoned bread. They served it to the crowd, hoping they would choke on it and reject you as a nobody. And for a time, you felt the sting. People you trusted walked away. Doors you once walked through closed. Eyes you once saw as kind now looked at you with suspicion. It was the weight of their deceit, the slow suffocation of your reputation. But here is the truth. Lies are only heavy when you try to carry them as your own. Once you learn to cast them off, once you refuse to carry what they tried to pin on you, those lies became as light as dust. They couldn't reach you because your spirit was covered in oil, anointed with a grace that no defamation could soil. They wanted to drown you under accusations, but you stepped on them like stones crossing a raging river. You see, the labyrinth was never meant to trap you forever. It was a test. Could you keep moving forward when you didn't know what came next? Could you trust the still, small voice of God when every echo around you was a lie? Could you hold on to your name when the world screamed another one at you? And you did. You endured the confusion without losing your essence. You walked through the fog without losing faith. Today, those same lies testify for you, because when the policeman confessed, every false accusation suddenly looked fragile, every rumor lost its virulence, and every slander turned back against the one who uttered it. And those who believed the worst now see how ridiculous it was to doubt you. The labyrinth has vanished, the walls have fallen, and in the rubble stands a silhouette, you unwavering, undefeated, unquestionable, the chosen one. Let that sink in. Their lies never proved your weakness. They proved the threat you represented. No one wastes that much energy on someone insignificant. The very scale of the attack revealed the importance of your calling. And while they tried to bury your name, heaven was engraving it deeper into eternity. That is why you are still standing. That is why the confession was necessary, because the labyrinth was never your prison, it was your testing ground. And when the labyrinth began to collapse, it wasn't just chance that opened it, it was your voice, you, the chosen one. You may not even realize the weight of your words, but every time you spoke, heaven backed you up. Every syllable was fire, every truth was a blade cutting through the lie. You weren't shouting for attention, but when you opened your mouth, corruption buckled. Systems built on lies trembled. Because your voice wasn't just a sound, it was celestial authority. They tried everything to shut you up. They mocked you, they twisted your words, they called you dramatic, delusional, unstable. They hoped you would give in to exhaustion and fall silent. But silence was never an option for the one carrying heaven's mandate. When you spoke, it wasn't just an opinion, it was a revelation. It wasn't just you facing corruption, it was the breath of God flowing through you, dismantling fortresses with invisible strength. Think about it, how many nights did you second-guess yourself, wondering if you should have stayed silent? How many times did fear whisper, "Don't say that, it will only make things worse"? And yet, something inside you refused to bow. Your spirit would not let the lies breathe without challenging them. When your voice trembled, you spoke anyway, even if your words cost you comfort. You let them out, and those words, those trembling fiery words, became hammers breaking chains. You couldn't even see your enemies underestimating that. They thought power resided in their titles, their documents, their networks of influence, but the real power was in your mouth. Scripture says that life and death are in the power of the tongue, and you wielded that truth like a prophet of old. What came from your lips were not empty words, it was a decree, and a decree has weight. The unseen world cannot ignore it. That is why they couldn't silence you. They tried to drown you in gossip, but your words still echoed. They tried to bury your testimony under paperwork and legal jargon, but your words still rose. They tried to ridicule you to make you back down, but your words kept burning in their ears like an unshakable alarm, because it wasn't just your voice, it was the collision of heaven and earth vibrating in your throat, you the chosen one. When the corrupt cop confessed, it wasn't simply because circumstances forced him, it was because your voice had already weakened his fortress. Every word you spoke up to that moment carved cracks in his armor. Every truth you revealed invoked the pressure of heaven itself, until his lies could no longer hold. Your voice was a spiritual demolition force. Never forget that. Your words are not ordinary, they are missions, arrows sent with precision, imbued with divine fire. When you speak, the atmosphere changes. When you speak, hidden things come to the surface. When you speak, corruption cannot breathe freely. That is why you were fought so fiercely. That is why they feared your voice more than anything. And now, as the confession echoes, remember it was your willingness to speak when silence would have been easier that forced the revelation. You carried a voice that corruption could not ignore, a voice that pierced the darkness with the sharpness of celestial fire. Your testimony was never background noise. It was a prophecy, it was thunder, it was irresistible. But chosen one, understand this. The The moment that corrupt cop confessed was not just a victory in an earthly court, it was a verdict that had already been delivered in the heavenly courtroom, long before the papers were filed, long before the lies were whispered, long before anyone dared to drag your name through the mud. The judge of all creation had already sealed your fate, innocent, favored, chosen. What unfolded here was only the earthly reflection of a heavenly decree. That is why you never completely broke under the pressure. Deep within your spirit, you always knew the truth had already been established. Even when fear gnawed at you, even when doubt weighed heavy, even when the opinions of others pierced you like daggers, a soft assurance vibrated within you: heaven is on my side. You didn't survive by luck, you survived because your fate was sealed in the courtroom of eternity before the trial even began. Imagine, the angels as witnesses, the throne as the bench, and the Creator as the judge. Every accusation brought against you first had to pass through that court, and one by one, they were dismissed. False testimonies were shredded in the spirit, rumors were struck from the record, the corrupt cop's lies were mocked in the heavenly chambers. The trial was never about your guilt, but about the manifestation of divine justice. That is why it felt so big, because it was bigger than you. You weren't just defending your name, you were the vessel for truth itself. Your endurance wasn't just a matter of personal survival, it was prophetic theater. God orchestrated your rehabilitation so the world could see what happens when corruption collides with divine authority. Earthly actors thought they were writing the script, but heaven had already set the stage. And when you spoke, when you prayed, when you refused to yield, you were testifying before that higher court. Every tear was evidence, every sleepless night a testimony, every act of faith one more document filed in your favor. Heaven recorded it all, and the gavel came down long before any earthly confession. The only reason you are alive to hear the policeman confess the truth is because heaven had already cleared your name. Do not miss this. The court of men can be influenced by lies, money, and pressure, but the heavenly court is incorruptible. No bribe can reach it, no manipulation can distort it, no slander can alter its verdict. This is why, as powerful as the opposition seemed, it was already defeated before it even began. It was pleading a case that heaven had already closed. Chosen one, when you were there hearing the confession pour out, you weren't just hearing an earthly voice, you were hearing the echo of the celestial gavel. It was God saying, I told you my child was innocent. I told you my chosen one was untouchable. I told you that truth always triumphs. That is why this moment overwhelmed you so much. It wasn't just about rehabilitation, it was about harmony. The spiritual and the natural met, and for once, everyone could see what heaven had always known. So lift your head, walk with confidence, not because the corrupt cop finally confessed, but because God proclaimed your innocence before you were even accused. This trial was never meant to prove anything to you, but to reveal God and the chosen one, even before the confession. Do you remember how the darkness tried to break you through ridicule? Those weren't just lies, they wanted you to feel the sting of mockery. They mocked your faith, whispered jokes about your resilience, dismissed your warnings as paranoia, and labeled your perseverance as obsession. Every time you spoke the truth, they wore smirks, as if mocking you could strip all power from your words. But what they didn't understand was that this mockery only amplified the light within you. The more they tried to belittle you, the more heaven strengthened you. Every taunt became further proof that you were on the right path, unwavering courage in the darkness, for no one mocks what isn't a threat. Their jeers were an admission, they feared the light you carried but didn't dare express it openly. So, they hid their fear behind laughter. Think back to the times when you walked into a room and felt the energy shift. They rolled their eyes, exchanged glances, and tried to look down on you. But even when they mocked you, your presence was undeniable. The more they tried to call you a fool, the more the atmosphere testified that you were chosen, because your integrity was unshakable. It didn't bend under laughter, it didn't break under jokes. It stood straight as a flame, refusing to bow to the wind. Every smear campaign, every rumor, every sarcastic remark, they thought it would exhaust you, that your spirit would eventually break under the weight of humiliation. But instead, your integrity sharpened, and your character grew stronger. Your silence in the face of their mockery became louder than their noise. You embodied a truth that didn't need defending, because truth does not bow to ridicule, truth does not bend when mocked, truth shines all the brighter the more the darkness tries to dim it. To ease this, chosen one, remember that ridicule is the language of the insecure. They mocked Jesus on the cross, they mocked David before Goliath, they mocked prophets throughout history, trying to reduce divine authority to a mere joke. But the light never faded, The mission never faltered, and neither did you. Your endurance in the face of ridicule was not a weakness, but proof of unshakable integrity. What they failed to understand was that every joke they threw only dug their own pit. Because while they laughed, heaven was writing your name in letters of honor. While they whispered, angels were recording your constancy in eternal scrolls. While they tried to make you look ridiculous, God recognized you as righteous. And when the confession finally came, their laughter died in their throats. The same mouths that had jeered at you fell silent. The same voices that had ridiculed you now whisper in admiration. How could they stay so strong? How did they never give in? Their mockery transformed into testimony. Their laughter became proof that you endured what would have broken other spirits. So stand tall, chosen one, and let their silence resonate. Heaven has already proclaimed it. Light cannot bow, it never has, and it never will. O chosen one, what you may not see right away is that your rehabilitation was never just about you. When that corrupt cop confessed, it wasn't just your name that was cleared, it was a moment of liberation that rippled through lives you may never fully know. For truth, once revealed, does not stay contained. It spreads like lightning, breaking the chains of those who were silently imprisoned by fear. There were people watching your struggle, unable to defend themselves. People suffocating under the same kind of corruption but who had neither the courage, the platform, nor the strength to fight back. They saw you go through the ordeal, and your perseverance gave them hope. But when the confession came, when the lie collapsed in broad daylight, something changed in them. Fear released its grip, courage surged in their hearts. They whispered to themselves, if the chosen one can hold on, maybe I can too. That is the power of your story. It wasn't a private victory, it was a public deliverance. Chains you never directly touched were broken, chains you will never wear. This place, which for years weighed on entire families living under intimidation, suddenly regained its strength. A breath of fresh air burst forth when the truth broke out. That is how liberation works. It doesn't ask for permission, it spreads. Think of Paul and Silas in prison. When their chains fell, the doors opened for all the prisoners around them. Your rehabilitation carried that same energy. As soon as the lie was broken, it broke for many more than just you. It exposed a system that many believed was untouchable. It revealed that corruption can collapse, that power built on lies is fragile, and those who were once silent suddenly found their voice. Chosen one, your courage to stand firm and not bow has multiplied into a choir. The oppressed are rising because your testimony proved that truth does not stay buried forever. It may take time, it may feel like the walls will never fall, but when the confession finally arrives, it is like an earthquake, shaking the foundations, crumbling the walls, setting the captives free. And here is the beauty, you didn't just clear your name, you purified the atmosphere. You changed the narrative, you reminded the entire world that even when corruption has the floor, heaven always has the last word. Your rehabilitation became their roadmap, your breakthrough. Your endurance became their model, their permission. Do not underestimate this, chosen one. Somewhere, someone who had lost hope in justice found it again because of your story. Someone who was ready to give in to fear decided to stand tall. Someone who thought their chains were unshakable felt them loosen because you refused to submit to yours. The confession was not just an end for you, it was a spark of freedom for many. And that is why heaven had to make it public, because your rehabilitation is a testimony, a living sermon that truth will always triumph, no matter how strong the opposition may seem. Chosen one, when the confession came, it wasn't just a man collapsing under the weight of truth, it was the entire system that supported him starting to crumble. Corruption never acts alone. It is a network, a web, a carefully woven structure designed to protect its own. But what they didn't foresee was your divine mandate. They underestimated the resilience within you. They thought you were just another voice they could stifle, a single life they could discredit. They didn't realize you carried the authority of heaven itself. Corruption is arrogant. It believes it can last forever because it hides behind intimidation. Paperwork, false alliances, and fear feed on silence, but as soon as a chosen one refuses to submit, the system begins to waver. Your resilience became a destructive force. Your refusal to give up created a crack in their foundations. Every time you stood your ground, their fortress weakened. And when the confession broke out, it wasn't just a single brick falling, it was the entire wall crumbling under its own rotten weight. Think about it, for years, they fed their lies like a beast, they built entire narratives on deceit. They convinced others that the system was untouchable, but truth has a way of revealing rot from the inside. When your resilience refused to bend, their lies began to turn against them. They could no longer maintain the consistency of their story. They could no longer control the narrative. Their arrogance caused their downfall. And here is the prophetic dimension. They thought they were dismantling you, but it was heaven dismantling them through you. Every tear you shed was a hammer blow. Every prayer you whispered was a sword strike. Every time you remained silent when they wanted you to explode, another thread of their plan unraveled. They thought they were wearing you out, but it was their system that was bleeding out. Chosen one, corruption thrives on illusion. Power perhaps, but illusions cannot stand against divine reality, and you were the embodiment of that reality. You carried the truth like a torch into their darkness, and their carefully constructed facade began to fall apart. The confession was merely the last nail in the coffin they had built for themselves. They buried their own integrity, stifled their own credibility, and succumbed under the weight of their own lies. Never forget this. Your resilience dismantled much more than accusations. It dismantled an entire network of deceit. And now, those who seemed untouchable are in retreat. Their fortress is nothing but ruins, their strategies reduced to ashes, their arrogance to dust. They underestimated you because they only saw your humanity. They didn't see the divine fire in your spirit, the mandate engraved in your soul. That is why you are still standing. That is why they collapsed. Systems built on corruption may roar for a time, but they cannot survive the truth. You embodied that truth. You forced them to face it. And in the end, it wasn't you who was dismantled. It was them. Chosen one. What they never foresaw was that the very darkness they plunged you into would become the place of your transformation. They thought exile would reduce you to silence, that obscurity would bury you, and that isolation would break your spirit. But on the contrary, those hidden years became your training ground. In the shadows, you were refined in the calm, sharpened in the darkness. You discovered a strength that no stage could have given you. They saw a victim, but heaven saw a victor in the making. Every rejection chiseled your character, every false denunciation forged your endurance, and every lonely night was a rehearsal for the throne. The pit they dug for you became the cradle of your authority. Like Joseph, betrayed by his brothers and cast into a dungeon, you were misunderstood, mislabeled, and cast aside. But the same God who raised him from prison to palace has now begun to raise you. The confession was more than a justification, it was a promotion. It was heaven announcing, "This one is ready." You have moved from obscurity to recognition, from the accused to the anointed. And here is the paradox. The very ones who tried to erase you are now forced to watch you rise. They used to speak your name with mockery, now they speak it with respect. They once saw you as a threat, do not be silent now, they see you as an essential leader. Understand this, your throne is not built on pride or vengeance, but on scars healed into wisdom. It is built on nights of tears where you held firm. It is built on battles fought in general indifference. That is why your reign will last. It is rooted in resilience, not in ego. You did not chase the throne, it came to you because heaven decided the time had come, chosen one. You do not sit in honor because of their approval, but by divine will. And no one can dethrone the one whom heaven has enthroned. Your life testifies that the last can become the first, that the stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone. You have moved from the shadows, where you were mocked, to the throne. They cannot deny you. Do not shrink back, do not apologize for the seat God has given you. You earned it through endurance, through faith, through the trial. And now, your ascension is not just about you, it is about the countless people who will follow your example. You are not just sitting on a throne of victory, you are carving a path, showing others that darkness is not the end, but the cradle of destiny. From victim to victor, from shadows to the throne, you are the chosen one, raised for a time such as this. What you must understand now is that your testimony was never just words. It became a weapon, not one forged by human hands, but one sharpened by celestial fire. Every time you stood up, every time you spoke, every time you refused to submit to lies, you were wielding a sword of truth. And this sword did not just cut through the lies of your own story, it pierced the deception that had persisted for generations. Strongholds had been built long before you arrived on this earth. Patterns of corruption, cycles of abuse, structures of intimidation that remained unpunished for decades. Families silenced, communities broken, entire systems designed to stifle the truth. But your voice, your testimony, your perseverance became the blade that pierced those ancestral walls. You weren't just fighting for yourself, you were digging tunnels of light through darkness that had reigned far too long. That is why the resistance was so intense. You weren't just exposing a corrupt cop, you were destabilizing an empire of lies, dismantling a system. A fortress of lies passed down through generations of oppressors, and every word of your testimony was like lightning striking stone walls. The sword of truth is not gentle, it is decisive. It cuts, it divides, it reveals what was hidden. And that is precisely what your life has done. Think of Esther revealing the plot to destroy her people. Think of Moses standing before Pharaoh demanding freedom. Think of the prophets crying out against idolatry, refusing to be silent even when kings raged against them. Your story joins their lineage. You too carried a sword, not in your hand, but in your mouth, not to harm but to liberate. And the chains that have rattled for generations are breaking under the weight of your testimony, chosen one. Your sword was not polished steel, it was your truth. And truth has always been the most dangerous weapon against systems built on lies. They feared your testimony more than anything. They could handle silence, they could handle submission, but they could not endure truth proclaimed with boldness. It struck too deep, it revealed too much, it carried too heavy a weight. And look at the consequences. The confession was not just an end, you proved that the sword of truth is unstoppable. You paved the way for others, you left a wound in the system that will never fully heal, because once the truth strikes, the scar remains forever. Even those who hate you cannot erase the fact that light now shines where darkness once reigned. So, wield it with confidence. Your testimony is your weapon, your story is your blade, and every time you share it, every time you refuse to let lies define you, you cut deeper into the strongholds of oppression. What started as your fight has become a revolution. What started as your rehabilitation has become liberation for many. The sword of truth is in your hands, and you have proven you know how to wield it brilliantly. Chosen one, this is bigger than mere rehabilitation. What unfolded was not just a matter of clearing your name, but of sealing your legacy in fire. Every battle you fought, every accusation you survived, every lie you defeated, has crystallized into something eternal. Your name, once dragged through the mud, now emerges as a banner raised high by heaven itself. Not a banner of pride, but a banner of courage, not a banner of selfishness, but a banner of divine favor. When people look at you now, they don't just see someone who survived, they see a living testimony of divine justice at work. This is what they didn't foresee. They thought that once the trial was over, the story would fade, that once the case was closed, you would retreat into silence, relieved but forgotten. But your victory resonates. It echoes far beyond this moment. It outlives the battle because truth sealed by fire does not fade, it becomes a legacy, and a legacy cannot be erased. Imagine how many others will tell your story, how many will whisper about the chosen one who wrung a confession from corruption itself. Long after the headlines have vanished, long after the whispers have died down, your name will still carry weight, not because of the scandal, but because of the triumph, not because of the drama, but because of destiny. Your story has now entered the realm of testimony, timeless, transmissible, indestructible. And here is the beauty, restoration follows justice. The same hands that tried to take everything from you must now watch God restore it to you sevenfold. What was stolen will return with interest. What was broken will be rebuilt stronger. What was denied will be given in abundance. Your rehabilitation was the door, but restoration is the feast waiting for you on the other side. You are the chosen one. You are entering a season where your very existence testifies that you do not have to force things or chase them. Your life is the sermon, your journey the prophecy, your testimony the proof. Every step you take forward is a new affirmation that justice is not just an idea, but a reality written in fire. And fire does not just burn, it purifies. The flame that tried to consume you instead refined you. It consumed the residue of lies, the false labels, and incinerated the shame. What remains is gold, radiant and untouchable. This is your legacy, a life forged in the fire of trial, but crowned by the glory of triumph. So walk with assurance, carry your name like a standard of light, and live as proof that no lie survives the truth, no system outlasts justice, and no corruption can erase the favor of God. Your legacy was sealed not by the applause of men, but by the decree of heaven, and that decree is eternal, chosen one. Breathe deeply. Let this truth sink in. You have walked through the fire, the mockery, the labyrinth, the courtroom, every whispered lie, and every shadow meant to bury you. And here you are. Still standing, still radiant, still chosen. This moment is not just the end of a chapter, it is the beginning of a new one. A chapter marked not by accusation, but by restoration, not by struggle but by peace. You no longer need to rehash the battle. The verdict is in, the confession has been spoken, and your name is now clear. It is time to live as someone who is free, to walk without the weight of doubt, to breathe without the oppression of fear, and to remember that your worth was never in question. Not before heaven, not before the one who fashioned you, nor before the destiny written upon your life. A quiet strength permeates this new stage, not the noise of needing to prove yourself, nor the urgency of survival, but the steady rhythm of peace. The same God who sustained you through the accusations will now lead you toward abundance. The same hand that defended you will open doors for you. The same presence that stood by you in the courtroom will accompany you into the places where honor awaits. Chosen one, let your spirit rest, let your heart exhale. You no longer need to fight as you did before. The tide has turned, the victory is declared. Your mission now is to embody the light, to live in such a way that your very presence testifies to divine justice. Your story is no longer a battle cry, but a lighthouse. Carry it gently, carry it boldly, and never forget that the confession that set you free was not just a moment, but a divine reminder that truth always triumphs, justice always prevails, and the chosen ones are always protected by heaven itself.